Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The moment felt electric. I was seated at my desk, the laptop open, the faint glow of the screen illuminating my face. His eyes on the other side of the video call felt like they were piercing right through me, making my heartbeat stutter in ways I didn't expect. Every word he spoke was light, playful, teasing, but there was an undercurrent of something more. I caught him leaning closer, the subtle shift of his body making the air between us feel charged, almost impossible to ignore. A sudden brush of his hand against the edge of the desk sent a shiver up my spine, my fingers tightening around the keyboard without me even realizing it. The silence that followed was almost unbearable, charged, thick, and heavy with intention. I could feel my pulse quickening, my breath catching just slightly as if my body was reacting before my mind had a chance to catch up. His gaze lingered on me, unwavering, and I found myself caught between wanting to look away and wanting to lean in. Every tiny movement, the tilt of his head, the curve of his lips as he smirked, the quiet intensity in his eyes, was a silent promise of something thrilling, something dangerously close. I felt the warmth of anticipation creep along my skin, the tension wrapping around me like a slow, irresistible current pulling me closer to him, even across the screen. And then, just as I thought I could anticipate his next move, the call was interrupted by a sudden, unexpected sound behind me, a creak in the floor, a shadow crossing the room. My pulse spiked. Something in the air had shifted, heavier now, more urgent. I froze, the screen still showing his amused, knowing expression, and a chill of suspense ran down my back. I knew, instinctively, that whatever happened next wouldn't just stay on the screen. Something was coming closer, closer than I had expected, and there was no turning back. The screen flickered, and then, everything changed. We had always been drawn to each other in ways that neither of us fully admitted. On the surface, our relationship seemed casual, playful, almost effortless. But beneath that light-hearted banter, there were cracks, tiny fissures that hinted at unsaid words, unfulfilled desires, and the weight of moments we avoided facing. I remembered the first time I truly noticed him, the way his laugh seemed to echo in a room even when it was empty, or how he always knew when I needed a touch, a look, or even just someone to silently understand me. And yet, we had both grown cautious over the months, hiding the intensity of our attraction behind jokes, teasing, and screens that kept our closeness at a safe distance. Tonight, though, everything felt different. Even through the video call, the intimacy between us was palpable. The way he leaned just a little too close, how his eyes lingered on mine, how the corners of his mouth hinted at something he didn't dare say out loud, it all drew me in. My chest tightened, and I found myself acutely aware of every subtle movement he made. Every laugh, every playful comment, was a thread pulling me closer, unraveling the careful boundaries we had built. I shifted in my seat, pretending to adjust something on my desk, but really I was stealing a glance at him, memorizing the way the light caught his hair, the slight tension in his jaw when he smiled that teasing smile. My mind raced, both with excitement and a hint of fear. We had never let ourselves get this close, not really, but something about tonight, something about the way he looked at me, felt like a quiet invitation I wasn't sure I could resist. There were moments, fleeting, almost imperceptible, where our hands brushed while gesturing, or when we laughed at the same joke just a heartbeat too long, and I felt the air thicken with something unspoken. Desire, tension, longing, they all mingled in a silent dance that neither of us dared to name. And yet, beneath the magnetic pull, there was the memory of things left unsaid. The quiet insecurities, the doubts, the fear of crossing a line that neither of us could uncross. My fingers hovered near the keyboard, yet I wasn't typing. My heart was too loud, my thoughts too scattered. The distance of the screen was a thin veil now, barely containing the storm that threatened to spill over between us. I realized then that this wasn't just attraction. It was history, it was tension, it was everything we had been avoiding wrapped up in a single, unspoken truth, that we both wanted more, but neither of us knew how to begin. And as our eyes met once again, the room seemed to shrink, and the anticipation wrapped around us, thick and undeniable. I didn't know what he would do next, and that uncertainty made every second feel electric. The moment his voice softened, something inside me stirred, a mix of longing and hesitation I couldn't quite control. I could almost feel the warmth of him on the other side of the screen, the way he always seemed to occupy more space than he should, even digitally. I bit my lip, trying to steady the rapid flutter of my heartbeat, but it was no use. Every playful comment, every lingering glance, felt loaded, charged with intention. Then, unexpectedly, a message popped up in the chat, not from him, but from someone else I knew he had been talking to. A teasing joke, a friendly compliment, nothing inappropriate, yet seeing it made a strange tightness curl in my chest. Jealousy, subtle but sharp, flared without warning. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure whether to comment, ignore, or let the feeling simmer. He noticed immediately. His eyes narrowed slightly, a question forming without a word. The intensity in his gaze made my stomach twist in anticipation. "You're quiet tonight," he murmured, voice low, teasing, yet tinged with something deeper. My pulse spiked as I felt the closeness between us, even through the screen. It was magnetic, almost suffocating in its pull. I swallowed, trying to regain control, but the tension was relentless. Every small movement, every smile, every sigh from him was like a spark landing dangerously close to dry kindling. I wanted to look away, but my eyes betrayed me, drawn again and again to him. My mind raced with the thrill of temptation, the thought of crossing boundaries we hadn't yet dared to approach. We both felt it, the unspoken rules, the electric anticipation, the precarious edge of something forbidden. It hovered over us like a storm about to break. A quiet, daring game of emotions had begun, curiosity, desire, and a pinch of rivalry all tangled together. I could feel myself teetering on the edge, my breath catching in my throat as I imagined the closeness that was almost within reach, yet still just beyond the screen. And then, a sudden sound behind me made me flinch, my eyes snapping back to the room. My pulse raced. He noticed my reaction instantly, his smirk growing, knowing that even at a distance, he had me exactly where he wanted. The suspense hung between us, thick and irresistible, as if the next move by him, by me, or by fate, would change everything. The room felt smaller tonight, the dim light from my laptop casting soft shadows that seemed to shrink the distance between us. I could hear the faint hum of the fan, the subtle creak of the floorboards behind me, and the almost imperceptible sound of his voice, low and teasing, coming from the other side of the screen. Each word, each glance, drew me closer, and I realized the line between playful conversation and something more had all but disappeared. He leaned forward, closer than before, eyes locking with mine in a way that made my breath catch. I could almost feel his presence, the warmth of him that seemed to stretch across the digital divide. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, yet I didn't dare type. My heartbeat thundered in my chest, each thump a silent confession of the desire I'd been trying to ignore. And then there was the moment, the pause where the world seemed to shrink to just the two of us. The screen showed him leaning back, smirk playing at his lips, a glimmer of challenge in his eyes. It was playful, yes, but beneath it lay something electric, something dangerously tempting. I could feel myself leaning into it, drawn toward the tension that neither of us wanted to release yet. Suddenly, the call froze for a split second. My screen flickered, and for a brief moment, I thought he had vanished. My chest tightened with anticipation. When the video came back, he was closer again, closer than he should have been in a normal conversation. The closeness, the intensity of his gaze, the teasing tilt of his head, it all hit me at once. I was acutely aware of the space I occupied, the subtle movements of my own body, and the undeniable pull that drew me toward him. Something unspoken hung in the air, heavy and deliciously dangerous. The moment stretched, fragile and electric, like a spark waiting to ignite a fire neither of us could control. I wanted to reach across the screen, to close the distance, but I hesitated, trapped in the delicious uncertainty of what might come next. And then, a sudden knock at the door made my heart leap into my throat. The timing was perfect, or disastrous. My pulse raced as I realized that whatever was about to happen, it wasn't going to wait for me to be ready. The knock at the door had shattered the fragile bubble we were living in. My pulse raced as I hesitated, torn between curiosity and dread. On the screen, he noticed immediately, his expression flickering with a mix of concern and something deeper, something I hadn't quite dared to name until now. I slowly rose, my hands trembling slightly, and moved toward the door, my laptop still open behind me. The camera caught every subtle reaction, and I could see the way his gaze followed me, unbroken, unwavering. There was a tension in the air that made even the silence between us feel electric. When I opened the door, it wasn't who I expected. A friend I hadn't seen in weeks stood there, smiling awkwardly, holding a small envelope. My eyes darted back to the screen, and his expression shifted instantly. Confusion, then realization, then something more, a spark of surprise, curiosity, and urgency. I didn't expect to see you, I stammered, taking the envelope. Seems like secrets don't stay hidden for long, he murmured, his voice low, teasing, yet edged with something vulnerable. Inside the envelope was a photograph, one that showed something I hadn't known, something that revealed a hidden layer to our connection. My breath caught. It wasn't a betrayal in the usual sense, but it was enough to make my heart race, enough to make every unspoken word between us suddenly weighty with meaning. His eyes met mine across the screen, sharp and challenging. You didn't think I knew, did you? His smirk softened into something almost tender, and in that moment, all the tension we'd been holding back, the longing, the desire, the fear, flared into full awareness. I realized then that we weren't just caught up in playful teasing or subtle flirtation. Every glance, every laugh, every pause had been a dance along the edge of something we both wanted but neither of us had fully admitted. The photograph, the secret, the interruption, it all forced us into a truth we could no longer ignore. I felt my chest tighten, a mixture of adrenaline and anticipation surging through me. He leaned forward again on the screen, closer than ever, his voice a whisper of promise. Are you ready to finally stop pretending? For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. Every hidden feeling, every suppressed longing, every quiet temptation coalesced into a single, intense moment that hung between us. And then, the screen flickered, the call froze, and I was left suspended in the electricity of anticipation, my mind racing with the question, what would happen the instant it resumed? The screen flickered back to life, and suddenly everything felt closer, sharper, unavoidable. He was there, eyes locked on mine, a mix of challenge, concern, and something raw that neither of us could hide any longer. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of everything, the unspoken words, the teasing glances, the secret desires, and finally allowed myself to confront it all. I can't keep pretending anymore, I admitted, my voice trembling slightly but carrying a newfound strength. My chest ached from anticipation, and yet there was relief in saying it aloud, in letting the tension escape. He leaned forward, a slow smile spreading across his face, the kind that made my pulse race and my heart feel like it could leap from my chest. Neither can I, he said softly, but there was an edge to his words, a daring, almost challenging energy that made me shiver. The room felt smaller, the space between us charged with every moment we had held back. We spoke in rapid, overlapping sentences for a while, confessing truths, teasing admissions, and bold desires we'd danced around for months. It wasn't just about attraction, it was about understanding, about finally recognizing the magnetic pull that had existed all along. I realized then that the choices we had made, the walls we had built around ourselves, didn't matter anymore. We were raw, honest, and open in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Each laugh, each fleeting smile, each small, nervous gesture carried weight and intimacy that no one else could see. A quiet pause fell between us, heavy with meaning. I could feel my pulse slowing, but the intensity remained a tender, thrilling reminder that we had crossed a threshold, both emotionally and mentally. So, now what? I asked, a faint smirk tugging at my lips, though my hand still trembled slightly. He tilted his head, a playful glint in his eye. Now, we see how far we're willing to go. It wasn't about physical closeness, it was about trust, honesty, and the courage to embrace what we had always wanted but feared to name. The screen between us no longer felt like a barrier but a bridge, a conduit for every confession, every laugh, every heartbeat that had gone unsaid. And as we leaned back, sharing a quiet, electric silence, I realized something profound. The climax wasn't a single act or confession. It was every small, brave choice we had made to let down our walls, to let the attraction and emotion guide us, and to finally be seen, not just by him, but by ourselves. The anticipation lingered, not as a tension to fear, but as a thrill of what could come next. We had faced the storm together, and now the horizon looked brighter than ever. The storm of tension, teasing, and unspoken desire had finally settled, leaving behind a quiet clarity that neither of us had dared to imagine before. The glow of the laptop illuminated his face, softening the intensity of his gaze into something tender and warm. I felt my heartbeat finally slow, replaced by a steady, comforting rhythm, the rhythm of knowing we had crossed the line from longing to something real. I never realized how much I wanted this, I admitted softly, the words trembling but true. He smiled, a gentle curve of his lips that made my chest tighten in the best possible way. Neither did I, he confessed, his voice low and sincere. But now that I do, I'm not letting it go. We laughed softly, the sound breaking through the tension like sunlight through clouds. For the first time, I felt free to simply enjoy him, his presence, his voice, the way he made me feel seen in ways no one else ever had. The moments of teasing, the flirtation, the suspense, they had all led to this, a pure, quiet connection that needed no pretense. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a sense of ease and warmth wash over me. He mirrored the gesture on his side of the screen, and for a few seconds, we simply looked at each other, sharing smiles and soft laughter. The world outside the screen didn't matter anymore. What mattered was this space, this connection, this understanding that had taken months to form but now felt effortless. I guess this is the start of something new, I said, feeling a thrill in the simple act of saying it aloud. He nodded, eyes gleaming with affection. The start of everything we've been wanting. For a moment, we sat in companionable silence, hearts beating a little faster but unafraid, the anticipation replaced with calm excitement. The closeness that had been tense and charged now felt nurturing, a promise of trust and shared moments to come. We were no longer just teasing across a screen, we were partners in this new chapter, exploring the joy of being truly present with each other. And as the night deepened, I realized that the real magic wasn't in the longing or the suspense. It was in this, two people finally allowing themselves to be seen, to feel, and to share the warmth of a bond that promised love, laughter, and countless small, meaningful moments ahead. The screen glowed softly, our faces side by side, and I knew, with an unmistakable certainty, that this was only the beginning.